Kristin Clark. And Kristin, she does coaching. But more importantly, what she does is she guides students in a career path and what life looks like after high school. And that's just my definition of what she does. So obviously she does a lot more, and she could tell you even in better words than I just did what she does. So Kristin, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yes. So can you please just go ahead and tell our listeners, a more polished, more detailed version of what you do?
Absolutely. Before I do that, though, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to highlight why I do what I do.
That's perfect.
Great. And by the way, you did a really good job of explaining what I do anyway, so you good lead in. So I'm not going to go back too far, but it sounds like I am. But 14 years old, I started scooping ice cream at Baskin-Robbins.
Okay.
What I found out is that I loved working. So just couldn't wait to get to work because, you know what? I got paid, which was much better than going to school. And I, at the time, of course, didn't feel like I was getting all that out of it, right? Fast forward, went to college. My first real job out of college was working for a pizza franchise, working on their marketing. And it did well. I had successes. I got more raises. I got more responsibility. Loved it. Kept going in marketing and ended up ultimately as a VP of marketing in a home security company. Did that for 6 years. Hated every minute of it. And I didn't know why. Yeah. Because it is what I was gunning for.
Right.
That was the end goal for me, is to be sitting at the table with all the executives, right? And I didn't know why. As fate would have it, and typically does, we had a new CEO come into that company, and he decided to bring his own executive team in. And marketing's always the first to go. So when I found out it was happening, I packed up my bags, waited, and yes, it happened. And I drove home with a huge smile on my face the whole way.
Right.
Because it was that bad that I just didn't love doing it. Now, keep in mind, throughout these years, I love working. I couldn't wait to get up and go to work in the morning. And then I was sitting there with the daunting task of, oh my gosh, this is what I've always wanted to do. What am I going to do next? And found myself looking at, job boards and doing the throwing up in my mouth because I was like, oh, I can't go back and do that. I just can't do it. But I was like, why? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is this, the way we're brought up, especially in the West, we have this conditioning where we feel like we need to be at a certain level in order to be a success, even though our gut and our heart is saying, this is not where you need to be. Right? Oh,
absolutely. And how many 45-year-olds do you see out there and they say, I hate what I'm doing? I hear it all the time.
Yes, constantly,
right?
constantly.
And especially when I say my story and I give it up and I say, yeah, I hated it. And they're like, I hate it too. Yeah. Then they feel comfortable just saying, what am I doing? It's
become a norm. It's almost a norm. When you work at a job, you sit with your coworkers, your team, whatever, there's always that moment you're just like, oh, I wish I wasn't doing this right now, but I have to pay the bills, right?
Oh, absolutely. And because you've had successes and you get paid more money and you get promotions and you get paid more money. Now, all of a sudden, you've got so much invested. You're like, how can I turn back now? How can I do something that I love now? Right?
So when that door opened, AKA, you being exited out of that company, right? That blessing.
Yeah.
How did that transition into what you're doing today?
I was out talking to just a lot of people. I was networking all over the place just to explore what would be next for me. And I ran into this lady, and she introduced me to the Clifton Strengths Assessment.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Strengths?
No.
It used to be called Strengths Finders.
Okay, yes. Okay. I don't know the new name.
Yes, I know, and it confuses people, but it's a better name, truthfully, for a lot of reasons. But there was a gentleman 50-plus years ago named Don Clifton, and he worked for the Gallup organization, which is a world-renowned research firm. And he looked at the world and basically got tired of thinking about what was wrong with people, and he wanted to figure out what was right with people and what their strengths were. So they did a lot of studies at the time with truly successful people that have done really well in their lives and that were happy. And they narrowed it down to 34 common themes and it's really a language around those 34 themes that they've provided for us too. But it really is about talking about what you're good at, and working within your strengths. And the whole theory here, and it's true, is when you're working within your strengths, it actually makes you happy and it energizes you. So now there's this Clifton Strengths Assessment. It's been around for 50 plus years, and over 23 million people have taken this assessment. So it's a great tool. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that I know some of the larger companies, because I'm in finance, that's my background, some of the bigger banks would have their employees take that and their managers take that to help foster team growth and figure out what's good for you, what's a good fit for you.
Absolutely. A lot of companies are doing this. And then you have a lot of universities now that are having their students go through the Clifton Strengths Assessment as well when they first get into school, which I love. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, so that happened. And what I figured out is in those positions I hated, I thought I needed to work and be a strategic thinker at that point, right? You're a VP in a company. You should be a strategic thinker. Challenge is, that's not how I'm built. Okay?
Okay.
All my strategic thinking themes, the bulk of them, are at the bottom of my 34. And what brought me to the table, what got me to the point where I was a VP and why people wanted me in their companies, was I was really good at getting people to move forward and move forward fast. So I influence people to get stuff done.
Okay.
That's my zone of genius. And I took it upon myself to take myself out of my zone of genius and put myself in a place that made me tired and, I had to really try hard to be strategic. So I've also had people say, well, Kristin, yes, you're a VP in a company. You need to be a strategic thinker. And the reality is there are people around that love to be strategic thinkers, and that's how they were born. And that I should have tapped into had I understood it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Every VP doesn't need to be a strategic thinker. I mean, that's why we have a team, right?
Right.
Leverage your strengths. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of strengths, because when I'm reaching out to somebody else that has the strengths with strategic thinking type strengths, that's an honor to them. They love it. They're so happy I've asked them to help me with that. And then when they need to get stuff done, I'm their girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very funny because I did a test not that long ago, actually, but for some reason, and I'm not sure if it was that test or another one, but I learned something new about myself. I learned that I guess I kind of figured I knew that, but it's different when you actually see it in front of you and you have to acknowledge it, that I'm a big picture person. So I'm like, okay, so the fact that I really hate sitting here and putting this data in the spreadsheet, that is killing me, but I have to do it. Oh, that makes sense.
It does, right? And you think about it, and it's so funny because when you're in that position, a lot of times you feel bad asking somebody else to do that task, right? There are people that love doing that stuff.
Yes. I know. They can all have it.
Right. I know. And that, well, like you said, that's the beauty of being part of a team, is that now having that language, you can understand what people are good at, what they enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, I keep saying love doing, enjoy doing. The fact that you can love your work and love going every day, and you can choose it.
Yeah.
That's the point. You can choose to do the things you love. And I got to tell you, I looked back I was like, when could have I changed this trajectory of my life? When was it that really could have made a difference? And I think back to a day on a college campus, and back then we had books for our, the classes that we wanted to take. And I remember looking at it, and there was one for interior design, and I was like, what idiot wants to take that class? And I remember time stopping. And I was just standing there, and I let it pass. And then the world started back up, and I kept going on my way, and I thought, man, if I would have had somebody to talk to back then. Now, keep in mind, there were college counselors back then. There were people available to me back then. But the reality is, there are people I really don't know.
Right.
And I didn't really know what to ask. What was I going to say? Is this really a stupid class? And what would have they told me back? Hopefully they would have pulled that out of me and said, Kristin, it's really, I was an art major. So it was right in my zone of genius for that. But yeah, I couldn't see myself there. And I think I would have been in a very different career at this point, and I see it as probably designing corporate buildings and being still a part of the corporate world, but doing it in a different way. But so I thought about that and I was like, okay, how can I help students that are in college or before college? And at the time, my two boys were getting ready to go to college. And I saw that the high school counselors really didn't have the time or the energy or, quite frankly, a lot of the background to be able to help them in this way, not in like this deep level. Right? And they're wonderful. They do what they're supposed to do in the high school setting. But it just takes some time for somebody to figure out a career path.
But also at that age, it's a rare student that will be proactive and say, this is what I love to do, right? If they even know it, this is kind of what I'm thinking about doing in college. Can you give me some advice? That is a very rare case.
Agreed. And you know what? I bow to those kids that are like, I knew I wanted to be a dentist at 5. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I was you, right? Because think about what a load off that is to know that at that age. So what we focus on is this. I take my students through, it's 3 things that they need to consider. The first is this. What are you good at academically? And that sounds like, really, Kristin? That's a tough question. But here's the deal. The ACT organization actually tells us that only 30% of students major in something that they were good at in high school. Now, we go back to our previous conversation. If you're good at something, you typically like it. You enjoy that activity to some extent. Right? So really thinking about that and really understanding what you truly loved about it. So take a kid that likes math. Why did he like math? Did he like crunching the numbers? Did he like teaching math to other people? Did he just think it was a fun party trick to be able to do numbers in his head, in front of other people? What was it that he loved about math? And when you start, why are you smiling?
Because I say the numbers don't lie, because I'm a nerd, self-professed nerd. I'm like, I love math. Numbers don't lie.
Right. And you're doing radio, right? And that's not a bad thing, because if we all use math, right? We all use it in our jobs. But the what comes out of that is, why did you love math? And how are you using it today, or how can I use it in the future? The second thing is, what do you really enjoy doing?
Yes.
Right? Now, let's face it, most 17-year-old boys love gaming.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, look at, we've got, an older boy that wants to.
An older 17-year-old.
And the reality is, there are a lot of jobs in the gaming industry.
Yes.
Right? And it doesn't have to be just, I'm playing games. It could be, I'm selling games. It could be, I'm a lawyer for gaming companies. It could be, I'm building the characters, or you name it.
Yes.
And that's just getting bigger. And that goes into radio and TV and some of these other things.
Yep.
And think about all the online entertainment that is all about video.
Yep.
So there's huge opportunity there. And I know when students go to parents a lot of times, right? The first reaction is going to be, you can't go into gaming. How do you get a job in video games?
There's a lot of money to be made in gaming.
Oh, there's a ton. But you know what? It kind of goes back to, as parents, for years and years and years, we've picked these kids up and not let them fail. They were going to fall at 2. We grabbed them before they hit the ground. They were going to go on a date when they were in high school, and we made sure they had a clean shirt on and, looked decent and brushed their teeth. Yes, we did that. So we're so programmed to be kind of the, I don't want you to fail. Let me rescue you.
Right.
And the reality is, these kids don't need rescuing. They have ideas. But you know what? As parents, a lot of times we're writing stuff in pen. As a coach, I can write it in pencil and go, oh, you changed your mind? Good, let's erase that. What's the next thing? Let's keep kind of talking, right? So they can just talk.
That's very important, knowing that it's not etched in stone, right? That you can change it. It's not a life or death. Life is change, and knowing that you can make your mind up today about one thing and change it tomorrow. I think also there's some generational, cultural differences that also comes into play. And you don't fall into that bucket you're definitely in, and could just be because you're around it all the time with these kids and understanding how they look at things. But I find that just the way of thinking is different. What is important is different. So I'll give you an example. I said to my son one day, he's an only child, the world doesn't revolve around you, right? Because when I grew up, I was told that the world didn't revolve around me.
Right.
And his response is, it doesn't, but I'm important because I have influence.
Wow. How old was he when he said that?
He was 9.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it.
I mean, he was right. I couldn't say anything. I was like,
you're
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Because it's a difference in how we see the world. And what you're doing, you're bridging that gap, right? You're bringing in that experience, knowing everything that you went through and tying it in with their viewpoint. Do you feel like this is what you do? Because I just...
You know what? And I never really understood, and I still can't explain it to parents. I'm like, guys, it just happens. Mm-hmm. They can... Well, I've always had people be able to tell me stuff. Just they'd tell me stuff, and I'd be like, I don't know why they're telling me this. So I'm sure part of it is just, again, the way I'm built. Mm-hmm. And, transparency is one of my core values, and individualization is one of my core values. So I think it just, people feel that I'm authentic in saying, let's just play it with it. And it's not scary.
Yeah.
And even my students tell me that. They're like, Kristin, you're just not scary. You're like a good friend that I can tell stuff to. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's my job. That's why I'm here.
That's good.
Well, and it brings in, too, when I talk with these students, I get to sit down with them. And the third part that I was going to tell you about is then bringing in the natural talents piece of it. Mm-hmm. I get to sit down and talk to them about all the things they're good at. Mm-hmm. And you think about it, how often do we do that with a kid?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. We don't sit there and applaud and say, oh my gosh, you are good at that. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, they've given me examples. They're like, oh yeah, they read the Clifton Strengths Assessment. They're like, Kristin, this is me. Yes. And let me tell you what I did. And this is, for this strength, this is what I did. And so it affirms for them. And they grow 2 inches when I take them through that assessment. It's amazing.
I am getting excited just talking to you about this. As a mother, understanding what you do, and, as someone who's been through college and high school and all of that stuff, understanding that there are some of the hiccups that come into play when you might be interested in something but lean a different way, and you don't have that outlet. You don't have that person that you trust to talk. It's so exciting. It's so refreshing talking to you about what you do.
Well, thank you. I love it. And I could talk about Clifton Strengths all day. So I really could.
Talking about the test and how important it is for young people, young adults, to have someone to talk to that they feel safe and comfortable with to help direct their path in life. And you gave us a little information about how you fell into this, right? And I find your journey to be really astounding. It's really, for lack of a better phrase, and I'm telling my age here a little bit, it's really cool that you were able to see, well, where I am is not where I should be. And a lot of times people find it difficult to leave the money behind. So when you're an executive, you're a VP, it's very hard to leave that money behind. How did you feel at that moment when you made that decision?
Knowing that I had a passion around this, and I saw an opportunity for a generation to change, for them to decide and choose to do something that they love from a young age, you know? Yes, it's hard, and it's hard for a family, right? Yeah. I was the moneymaker in my family. I was the breadwinner. But the choice, to do something that you're passionate about, there wasn't a choice. Yeah, it was, I have to do this. And I feel like there's a huge opportunity for me too to take this larger than just myself. One of the things that I'm working on now is putting together a half-day event for parents and students to come together and to meet with experts in the community to help them through this college planning journey. And here's where I think it's hugely important for parents, not only for the emotional well-being of our kids, which we're all in on that, but to save money on college. Because what's happening today is our kids are going into college, and it's taking them 6 years to get through a 4-year college education.
Yep.
You know what? Back when I was going to school, we could do that, and it wasn't that big of a deal financially.
Yeah.
Right? I put myself through college, and I could do that back then. Our kids can't do that today.
No.
Not in 4 years for sure. And the reason it's taken them so long is they're switching majors, right? Because they don't know their why. They don't know why they're going to college. It's just the next thing I'm supposed to do.
Correct.
So if we can get the students before they go to college and help them at least weed out some of the stuff they know they don't want to do. And when I talk about helping them with a career path, it's a career path. I'm not saying I'm going to be a lawyer that does, work in, I'm not going to be the one litigating, I'm going to be doing it's not that clear. It's just what path do we want to go down so that when they're shifting gears a little bit, it's a shift. It's not a 180-degree turn.
Right.
So now they've got the ability to add to their schooling. So each step they take, they're adding to. It's not a turnaround, right? And for parents, I'll tell you, I offer my services for juniors and seniors in high school. Prior to that, truthfully, they're not scared enough about the future, and they're just not ready. And the bulk of my customers are sophomores in college, and their parents are writing the big checks at this point, and their kids are changing majors every semester, and they're like, Kristin, please help me.
Right.
Which I love. I love that age.
Right.
I love all these ages, really love that age, but where I can really help parents save money is if I get to them before they go to college.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, sometimes what I find out is the kids are just going to college because mom and dad said it's the next step. They're trying to do something that may not require college.
That's very common too.
Oh, it is. Well, we've got 30% of these kids drop out of college after the first year.
Yeah.
And for parents, that's a $25,000 to $70,000 check they've written that they've lost.
So part of it, it's helping, and you're helping the children, the young adults understand what their interests are and what they might be good at and where they could, venture or carve out their path. But also the parents have to take some responsibility on their viewpoint and how they're approaching it and understand that their experience is not their kids' experience.
Absolutely. And the good news is I've not had a parent err on the side of they have to go to college versus I want my child to be happy.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's really what all parents want.
Absolutely. Well, Kristin, so if someone wanted to get in contact with you, and I know we didn't get a chance to speak about your speaking, and we'll talk about that right after you give your contact information.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Sure. You can get in touch with me through Facebook on Kristin Clark Coaching or on my website at KristinClark.com. And that's KRISTIN Clark.com.
Awesome. Kristin Clark Coaching, KristinClark.com. Okay, so you're a speaker.
Yes.
Right? And I kind of did not include that in my introduction. So what type of things do you speak about?
Well, I speak to parents about helping them help their student pick a major.
Okay.
And then I also speak just about Clifton strengths, too, because I always get adults saying, Kristin, I don't know what I want to do. Can you help me? I absolutely can do that, too. So I speak on both topics.
Okay. So it's twofold. You help the kids, but you also educate the parents.
Yes.
So it's twofold. All right. That's perfect. Well, Kristin, I am so happy having you here today. This is a really good conversation. And yes, I got a little excited. Almost forgot the break. But we do have to have a break every now and then. It's a pleasure speaking with you today. And I do hope to see you more often in the future.
Me too.
Okay. You're always welcome. Thank you so much.